The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Hello.
All right.
And welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I am your host, Peter Martin of Gosselin Martin Associates. And as always, thank you for clicking on this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Today's episode, I thank my three guests for joining me. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk a little bit about their respondents. I appreciate these gentlemen for responding to our healthcare facility survey that we sent out September and October of 2023. These gentlemen kindly said that they would respond or would be willing to appear on the Healthcare Facilities Network. So I thank them all. I'm going to do a brief intro for each of these gentlemen, and then I'm going to ask them to give a little bit more detail. So the person to my right is Mark Yerrick. Mark is Assistant Vice President of Facilities, Real Estate, and Security at CARE New England, a system in Rhode Island. So Mark is located in Providence, Rhode Island. Down beneath Mark, we have Jim Campoli. Jim is the Director of Operations and Services at Matheny Medical and Educational Center, located in Peapack, New Jersey. Is that right, Jim? Peapack?
Correct.
I always say that wrong. And down at the lower right, we have a returning guest on the Healthcare Facilities Network, another victim. We have Clayton Smith. Clayton is from Children's Health Dallas. Clayton is a Senior Vice President of Facilities Management. So, gentlemen, I thank you for appearing, and I'm going to ask a real simple question, and we'll start with Mark. Guys, can you give a little bit of perspective? How many years you've been working in healthcare facilities management? What have you done? And more importantly, as you look at the landscape of 2023, as we come to the final weeks of 2023 and we move into 2024, how would you describe the state of the discipline today and what you see? Mark, can I begin with you, please?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. And good morning, good afternoon, depending where you folks are located. I am Mark Yerrick, Assistant Vice President, CARE New England for Facilities, Real Estate, and Security. I've been in healthcare leadership positions for about 35 years. Spent most of my career in the healthcare management company. Sorry about that. And this is my first in-house job, if you will. I've been here 3 years. I would say that the current state, especially as it relates to sustainability, I think our biggest issue right now is finances, capital finances, to be quite honest with you, and what the money that we have available to invest. The system would love to continue to growth mode with maybe a new robot, new CT, some additions to our facilities and renovations, and it makes it a little more difficult for us to invest other capital dollars in the needs that I have to kind of head towards a sustainability approach.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And just a quick question, Mark. You said this is your first foray kind of into the owner side. I know many years. Mark and I have been talking for many years. It's the first time I've actually ever seen your face. We always talk over the phone. Same thing for Jim. So it's good to see you. But how have you found that transition, Mark, from kind of the contracted services provider world where you were for so many years into the lead, and you were a leader there as well? Now, on the owner side, what's that transition been like for you?
It's been extremely positive. You always had in the contract world, you kind of had two bosses, if you know what I mean. You had to serve the company you worked for, but you also had to serve the client. And sometimes there was a conflict there, depending upon what it was. But 3 years here, and and I say this to people, I love my job, and they're like, "You love your job?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love my job," and very happy here. So it's been a nice change, and obviously with your help getting me here, it's been great. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. It's great to hear people who say they love their job.
Yeah.
Jim, why don't we move down to you, please?
Sure. My first management position in healthcare was in 1986. I spent the bulk of my career at University of Medicine and Dentistry, which became Rutgers RBHS, running 10 million square foot in Newark of a diverse higher education medical space. And I've recently retired and moved down here to Peapack with my 130,000 square foot facility. So I'm back to square one. It's been a great trip so far. So the biggest problem facing us today is the problem I walked into in 1986. We still refuse to fund life cycling and sustainment costs. It's no different today than it was in 1986. It's been somewhat more complicated today by by the restrictions and the demands that have been put on the industry with climate change, and with our current struggles with staffing and so forth. But the problems are essentially the same as they were 40 years ago when I walked into this.
So do you have the answers?
Do I have the answers? The answers are funding. But
Yeah.
where does that funding come from?
Yeah.
All right. It's a simple equation. And so as everybody on this call knows, I've gone from a large system where funding wasn't so much of an issue. We have 6,000 hospitals in this country, but the bulk of those hospitals are under 200 beds, freestanding independents that don't have the funds that a Rutgers has. So it's a whole different set of challenges.
Yes.
So the answers are through some type of subsidies.
Jim, can I just ask you an answer, kind of like what I had asked Mark relative to his transition? You've transitioned from a really large organization, Rutgers, down to a small mission-based organization at Matheny. Sometimes you hear organizations can be hesitant to say, hey, why is this person going to leave this monster and come down and work for us? And, why would they want to make that change? So I would just ask you, how has the transition been for you? And have you enjoyed it going from, again, a large organization down to a, beautiful organization in a bucolic spot in New Jersey that's got beautiful views and,
So you actually know part of this answer. So, but I will tell you this, became aware of an opportunity at Matheny. I was in a career path where I could retire at that time. I chose to retire, and I tell people this all the time. I'm here at this 130,000 square foot facility that we have 6 group homes, and we serve children and adults with the most severe complex medical disabilities that there are. And this is by far not even close to the most rewarding position I've ever had. And the difference is you really see the impact of the human element here. Everybody on the screen is somewhat like me. It's like, oh yeah, it was great. We built a new 18 meg cogen plant and so forth, right? And we have the largest electric centrifugal chiller on the eastern seaboard, and our connected load is 30,000 ton. When you come back here, you realize it's the human element that makes the difference. It's the touching it every day that makes the difference. So if I tell everybody, if there's a lesson to be learned by stepping back, it's don't forget that human element, because it's extremely important.
Wow, great answer. Thanks. This is Peter Martin. If you or your organization is interested in advertising or partnering with the Healthcare Facilities Network, including sponsoring content, then please email me using the barcode in the lower right of your screen. From the trades level to the vice president level, from planning, design, construction, project management, compliance, safety, and security, the Healthcare Facilities Network reaches FM people where FM people are. Clayton, how about you?
Sure. So my name is Clayton Smith, Senior Vice President of Facilities at Children's Health in Dallas. I've been, it's my 3rd hospital since 2007. I started my career in the construction side of the world and just kind of fell into healthcare in 2007, and have grown from construction project management into leadership roles, and now with multiple different departments of EVS and engineering and infrastructure and PD&C and security and internal transport. And you kind of you start showing success in one thing and you get more, right? And it's kind of how that goes. You're doing great. Here's some more to do.
That's right.
But with that, I think it's shown some, the diversity of it. It's easy to kind of geek out into the thing that right? And I came out in construction and I felt like I knew that. And then when you move over to that operational side, especially on the facility side, you start thinking more along the line of, project life cycle, and how our equipment life cycle, and how do we make sure we make the good decisions during construction that, when you're a construction guy, all you care about is schedule and budget. But when you're on the operations side, I got to make this thing live forever. And, or at least, until way down the road when we can make some replacement plans. I think that's been super helpful to kind of blend that mentality over to that operational side. In pediatrics and in Dallas, we are very, very blessed with a very strong financial performance, with a leadership team who definitely is forward thinking and is not only we saying grow, but also grow smart, grow well, grow sustainable. And we're in a growth mode right now where we can invest in those sustainable measures. On top of that, super, super blessed to have a very robust infrastructure team with 4 PEs that just work on the engineering side. They're not designers. They manage the infrastructure. They keep up with the capital plan, the capital reinvestment plan for engineering, and then because they have the ability to be integrated in that group, and they have that foresight to think about sustainability. When an air handler needs to be replaced, let's look at it from a sustainability lens as well. When a chiller needs to be replaced, let's make sure we're doing the very best we can do when we get those funds allocated to us. So, I hear it all across the country when I talk to my peer groups that, our problem is funding. Yeah. And I kind of want to shirk back in the corner a little bit and say, I don't really have that problem because we get funded well, but it's, because we are funded well, because we have that, my charge to the team is, well, let's take advantage of this thing and not just lead our organization, but let's start leading the industry and start paving the road for, using newer technologies, using more sustainable technologies. We can become the case study so that someone else may use us as a white paper to justify, a little bit more spend, but here's the benefit on the back end.
Sure. Well, thank you. And I think 2 things from what Clayton just said. If you are interested, back in, I think it was July, we released it in July or right around August when the ASHI annual came out. I did a 2-part episode with Clayton and one of his managers, Taylor Vaughn. It's called Team Development and Composition. And we go into a little bit more detail, and Clayton talks about that and some of the team building they've been able to do down at Children's. And I think that is an interesting class. And then secondly, that's kind of what you just hit on there, Clayton, is what I like about this group, because you're all in a different spot. And not to make you feel bad, Clayton, you're funded well. Granted, you still have fiduciary responsibility to spend it well. So it's not like you're out there throwing dollars. Mark, because I'm up here in New England, I know Care New England has gone through, some what do you call that word I'm looking for? Merger talks that have fallen apart. I know you've led through 3 years of at times chaos, and you've done a great job, and you still love your job. So that says a lot. And Jim, you're down at the smaller organization with the funding. So it's kind of you all come at this from a different perspective. And what we want to start the conversation with is the sustainability and decarbonization that we talked about in the survey. I'm going to share my screen just for a second. Well, I'm going to share it for more than a second, but I want to pull it up because this was the question that the gentleman responded to relative to decarbonization, sustainability, to specific to 2030 date only. So there's the big date of 2050 that to reduce their emissions, but we're just going to the 2030, the suggested standards by Department of Health and Human Services to reduce their emissions by half, comparing that to a baseline, which was established in 2008. So we asked the respondents only specific to the 2030 date. How concerned are you about your organization's ability to do that? Figured, we're not going to go out to 2050. The survey replies, and you can see them up here. 41% of respondents were very concerned. 35% of respondents were concerned. So that's just about 76%. We had over 160 responses to this. So a pretty good response. I was really happy with our network for responding. So 76% of people were concerned or very concerned. 11% said they don't think about it. The I will have departed, I just wanted to see if we could pull in some of the retirement people, because we did ask a retirement question in here when people were thinking of retiring, but nobody said I will have departed. And then 9% said that they'll meet it by 2030. So that was the breakdown. On this group with us, and Mark, I'll start with you first. And Mark is concerned about meeting the 2030 impact. Talking about fund to handle the day-to-day operations, I'm concerned that using sustainable energy for everything will impact our ability to meet the 96-hour rule for emergency power. So, Mark, tell us about the very concerned. What are your thoughts? What are your concerns?
I think the first thing is, as I had mentioned earlier, is funding. And I mean, I am fortunate, I think, to be able to go back to 2008, because we have done some things since then with LED lighting and some things like that with parking lots and some of the renovations we've done. It's more of a concern, the last couple of years and moving forward to 24, 25, as far as having that. The organization at this point doesn't fund 100% of depreciation. And we're going into Epic, which is everyone knows the Epic EMR is a huge nut to crack as far as finances. So competing with new medical equipment and advances in the industry, we in the facilities world are kind of taking it's almost as a contingency plan. It's more of an urgent need versus a planning need. And if I could plan, I think that by 2030 we'd have a pretty good plan in place to be able to reach that target. So it's more about probably 23, 24, 25, and maybe we'll have some dollars after that. But the deferred maintenance, and you mentioned the merger, Pete, and when we went through the merger talks, we had consultants come in and look at buildings and things. Our deferred maintenance is pushing $300 million. And that's pretty much through the three main hospitals. Of course, we've got some office buildings we own and things, but primarily it's the three main hospitals. I could tell you right now, it would be better to build a tower new with everything new than to try to go back, because if I got the money, I couldn't spend it before I'd have to spend it again. So, that is the concern. A lot of, I give my facilities team a lot of credit. I mean, we've done this for years that have been in the facilities industry. We used to pat ourselves on the back because we could use bale wire and duct tape and keep things together. Now I'm almost like, no. We need we need efficiency to be able to meet that target. So those are kind of it in a nutshell. With respect to the 96-hour rule, and maybe the industry will maybe understand what we're trying to do here. I think there's technology out there. I just don't know that it's advanced enough where I could run, a 300-bed hospital on battery power, say for 96 hours, or if you had solar, would it recharge enough to be able to do that? So, we have our generators, and I think we have to have, in my opinion, some form of a fossil fuel as a backup in an emergency situation.
What do you gentlemen think about that? What Mark just said there relative to the 96-hour rule and the backup with fossil fuels? Thoughts on that?
We are addressing this in a somewhat of a hybrid way, but we made the decision based on our grid fluctuations here in Texas, and the fact that we are a decoupled grid, and we've seen how close we could get to not only just losing normal power intermittently, but for extended periods of time. We've committed to microgrids. So we've partnered with a vendor on both of our hospital campuses, or on our current hospital campus in Plano, and from some future work in Dallas to build microgrids and then back up all of our normal power feed. Now, it's still going to run on natural gas. We can buy some more sustainable fossil fuels, but what it basically ends up making our generators are suspenders, or even belt suspenders, and an extra pair of pants, because we anticipate running our generators simply for testing. And we're still required to have it CMS. Probably within the next 5 to 10 years, we could see microgrids being a replacement. The issue for us is the 10-second delay. Our vendor doesn't feel comfortable guaranteeing a 10-second delay, just because they understand what that 10-second is actually connected to on the other side. And but we partner with them. We are in lots of talks with them. I've got one of the engineers on my team is probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know about microgrids, and she's working with them very closely on how can we not only use the system at this hospital, let's continue to improve it. Like I said before, let's invest in these things, improve them so that others can get that same benefit.
So I've gone from a freestanding island mode campus to a campus that's on an overhead single circuit.
Hmm.
Okay, and it all comes back to us and to, I believe, for a large group of the smaller, back to what Mark said with the funding. It's we're not going to have the ability to fund battery backup in the interim, and we don't have a grid here in PPAC that would support it. So it's a huge challenge for us and people in our situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm honestly not the smartest person, and especially when it comes to this stuff, but I was, they say all politics is local. And so as Mark and I were talking before you guys joined, we had a storm that rolled through here yesterday that knocked out power. So my home's been without power. And my daughter and I were driving around town last night, and there was there's a lot of darkness. There were poles down across streets. There were big pines down. Everybody's in dark. And I just started to think, if we go, I was thinking about battery powered cars. I was like, what, who knows? And, National Grid is saying, be prepared to be out, without power for 3 or 4 days. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what happens? I knew we were going to be talking to. I was like, what happens in that eventuality? Now you guys are running hospitals. I just have a car. If in worst case scenario, you don't go anywhere, but you don't have that excuse, or you don't have that option.
And to that point, back to the 6,000 hospitals, a huge percentage of these are not in metropolises. They're not in urban areas. They're in the PPACs of the world, or in the very small communities where the grid is not there to support them. This is an effort that's going to be taken upon themselves to get done. So, we have two very different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, right now I'm in Rhode Island, and as you know, I have a home in Maine. I think about 80% of the state of Maine's without power this morning. And I know in Maine, my home went out yesterday about this time, and I went on the local website, and they're still assessing,
Yeah.
when power will even be back up. So with respect to a car, I get it. You're not going to be able to plug it in and charge it. The hospitals up there, I mean, they've got to have these MOUs in place where, they've got folks coming in to refill the generators with their fuel. They've got other things they got to have in place. What do you do with your plumbing? I mean, what do you do with I mean, it's not just a power. There's so much that runs off of that with your medical gas systems, your vacuum systems. It's everything. Elevators. So it's not just as simple as what are we going to do for, to get the power back on. It's basically trying to run a hospital to keep everything moving without the power that we have in place.
And I think I have a good example of the challenges between the large urban and the small. 2 years ago in Newark, and again, we were an island unto ourselves, but PSE&G could tell me exactly what the problem was and exactly when it would be restored. Okay. I came here a month into my trip here. We lost overhead, 2,700 residents on this line. That's it. And it took 6 hours to find the problem. So completely different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what was that realization for? I mean, what was that like when that moment hit, Jim? What was kind of that realization like for you?
So the realization is interesting because it happens a lot where I am so used to being able to say, hey, we're 10 million square foot, we can't shut down. All right. And everybody agrees, and the University Hospital in Newark shutting down is Channel 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matheny with their lights blinking, it's not Channel 7. So it's, the relationships have to be built a little bit differently.
Yeah. Good thing they have a seasoned gentleman in that
Yes, they
build those
have
relationships
a little bit differently.
If I could interject here, Peter,
Yeah.
just one thing with respect to this. So, we all want to do, when power is normal in the middle of the summer, we want to do some control or setbacks or things. And you start talking, oh, no, you can't set back the OR. You can't, you got humidity, you got temperatures you need to worry about, or you can't turn down the lab, or you can't do this in SPD. And look at this, they're staring at 24, 48 hours on generator, and they want everything to work. So we kind of contradict ourselves at times, but when we'd like to save it, we can't, and now we don't have an option. So
Clayton, I wanted to ask you that, Mark, you had talked about humidity. I've never asked you before. I'm assuming you got it all squared away, but what's it like in the summer down there? A couple of years ago, Dallas was over 100 for like 100 straight days. Or what's that heat, the unrelenting heat and humidity like? How do you deal with it? What do you do? What are some of the problems you're encountering?
Yeah, I came from Florida and I thought I knew what hot and wet felt like until I got to Dallas. And it's not,
Dallas is worse.
Dallas's heat is considerably worse. We design these buildings and these systems on a design day of probably around 95 degrees. When you're running 108 sustained for weeks, or 3-4 days, and then you get a break and you're down to 102. And then that, I think this last summer we did well over 100 days, over 100 degrees. And, we try really hard to, make sure that's one of the drivers for don't put rooftop equipment, because our roofs are running about 140 degrees. And just the ability for that equipment to do what it needs to do to keep the space right. But we still have the same scenario. We're out of compliance on a humidity, super high humidity, super high heat. The system's doing everything it can possibly do. And you have to make that call to your OR leadership team or your senior leadership team that, we're giving her all we got, Captain. And we just need to understand what that means, right? Yeah. Are we at 61% humidity in the OR, or are we at 80% humidity in the OR? We never get way up in the high range, but it's something that we monitor, we stay on top of, we make sure that we deploy greater EVS work to when we terminal clean that OR, when it's in those high ranges, that we do a full terminal clean to make sure there's no moisture in that space at all. But yeah, it's a struggle. And then all the other things happen, like, right, your roofs aren't made to be sitting there just baking like that. Your sidewalks, are the soils here in North Texas are terrible, that, with the dry and the wet and the dry and the wet, and we don't have as much freeze thaw as you guys may have, but the movement of the soil makes a huge difference on, our sidewalks, our roads, our foundations, our parking lots.
Huh. Never really thought of that. I always think of it in the kind of like that freeze thaw cycle that we go through up here.
It's almost the same, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? And it's something we just, we fight with, and it's just yet another problem.
So, going back to kind of the sustainability and decarbonization, kind of the issues that you gentlemen have brought up, and I don't know. I know that many organizations have teams in place to meet some of these goals. Obviously, it's a huge focus with all organizations. So I guess in general, and I'm not asking you to not even sell out the organization, but like how much, because there's many voices at this table. You're the voice of the building and the OR and the heat and the humidity, and how vociferous, how involved are you gentlemen? And is your input taken, but what's it like from the facilities perspective to kind of say, like we were talking about with the cars, hey, hold on a sec. If we go this route, do we have the battery power? So what's that process like for you gentlemen to kind of balance that, right? To go where the organization wants to go, but at the same time, keep you safe and keep in check. Anybody want to take that one?
Well, I'll lead it off because I'm just entering that here.
Okay.
All right. But based on my past life and based on our new ask, it's going to be that same thing, trying to get funds for life cycling and building sustainment with a different twist, because those funds are now going to increase percentage wise. So the ask is going to be larger and the ask is going to be more diverse. And in a lot of cases, the ask is not going to be understood just because it is a new ask. And so to me, it's no different than yesterday. It's just that ask is slightly different. That ask and the presentation is slightly different than it was yesterday.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. I actually chair and facilitate the capital committee for the organization, which is nice to be involved in. So I do have a seat at the table and putting the agendas together and things like that monthly. So I do have a voice, but I'm also reasonable at the same point when, we have 3 OU presidents or, the CEO of the system at the table saying, look, we really need to go in this direction. We really need this. We're recruiting physicians and they'd like to have that. So it is it's the give and take. But again, reading, with what Jim's saying, it's not going to take 1 year of a couple $1 million. It's going to take pardon the pun, a sustainable amount of funding for us to be able to do the sustainability we need to do moving forward.
Yeah. I think for us, and one of the things I challenge my team to do is it is our job to educate those folks that just as much as we should be invested. And I think what you said earlier about the human connection of what we do, people do what we do all over the world, but what we do impacts people's lives, right? So it's like, for us, the mission is close to us. So making lives better for children. It's easy to get them to go to work for that. But then just as much as I expect my engineering staff to be connected to the nursing side, connecting to the clinical side and understanding what that means and feeling like you need to learn how an OR works. You need to unlearn how a nursing floor works, because that allows you to help them more, right? It allows you all to work together. Same thing. It's on us to educate the staff, and specifically in this case, the senior leadership. I'm fortunate here that our CEO and our COO both have a strong background on the physical side. And so it's easy to sit down and talk to them. But then I like to do an annual kind of state of the facility notice of, here are the big projects we knocked out. Here is the big number of utilities spend. And like one thing we invest in sustainable energy buy. 50% of all of our energy is bought from wind or solar in Texas. We pay a little premium for that, but we're also the largest pediatric hospital buyer in the country. And kind of hit those high notes to say, this is what we're really doing. All this work we're doing behind the scenes. I want you to see that. And I get a lot of good feedback from, I had no idea we did all these things. I had no idea, and I think that's our job to educate them on the things that we're experts in, just as much as they're educating us on what they're experts in.
Clayton, is there you talk about educating, and informing, is there a simple, easy, is there a simple, time effective tool that you found that gets, because people have short attention spans, they want it quickly, is there a simple tool that you found is effective to convey information quickly to your leadership above?
I wish there was a dashboard they could just look at and I didn't have to put together a PowerPoint presentation for it. But that's what I do. I do a PowerPoint presentation and try to make it, not deep into technical speak, but those bullet points, high points, things that have changed, things that we've gone through. It also gives me an opportunity to kind of boost up the view of some of my staff. Like I've got a very eager staff wanting to learn, wanting to grow. They're presenting, they're writing articles, they're doing those things. I need that senior leadership team to know that it's definitely not me. I've got a robust staff that are doing a lot of that stuff, and I want them to have some of that face time as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a PowerPoint presentation. I wish it was easier, but it's not.
Yeah, that's why I asked, not to put you on the spot, but like, geez, what if there's a simple tool that people can learn from now?
So one of the best things about going small is I've reversed that. It used to be the PowerPoint and then back it up with the conversation when you could get FaceTime. And now I have the constant FaceTime. So the conversations happen, and it's a lot easier to get this across in conversation, and then the PowerPoints back it up. And to Clayton's point, one of the key things with me now is that I bring my reports into that conversation so that they can grow and they can develop those relationships. So that is a truly tremendous thing about downsizing, is kind of reversing that process.
This concludes episode 1. Please return to the Healthcare Facilities Network in the near future to view episode 2.